Hello, my friends. Here I am, Pedro Candeias, the founder of Karate Science Academy, and the weekly open lessons on Karate Science Academy's YouTube are back. Okay, beginning in this week after 11 open lessons that I shared in Karate Science Academy's YouTube. I had to stop it, okay, because time I can't multiply time as I wished. Okay, so since I started the Explosive Karate 2021 certified course dedicated to speed and power development, exclusively adapted to karate. Okay, 100% evidence based. Just that the information I bring to you is 100% evidence based and not based on my personal experience or some seminars or workshops I made with someone. And I started with that online course. Then we ended that part, and right now I am sharing and recording the lessons of the strength and conditioning specialization specific for karate and my offline world, my gym, my karate lessons, my Pilates lessons, everything I'm enrolled in my professional life outside the internet, and giving the best experience possible, the best knowledge possible to the 120 coaches I have inside that course, that specialization. Um, Took all the time I have. Okay, so what I decided to make to return to this format of the weekly open lessons on Karate Science Academy's YouTube is that I will share with you some lessons that are inside that course. Okay, for 7 days. When I share a new one, I generally take the last one of the channel. So be aware, subscribe the channel with the notifications activated so you don't miss any of the free lessons the open lessons I share in the Karate Science Academy's YouTube. And so I'm going to share those lessons. After this introduction, you will be sent directly to the lesson that is available inside that course. Okay, and this first one, that is the number 12, the lesson number 12 I share in Karate Science Academy's YouTube. We are going to talk about the role of muscle mass, of hypertrophy in karate's performance. Okay, so is it good? Is it bad? There is a huge myth inside the karate's world that muscle mass is generically bad, negative to karate performance, that will make us slower, that will make us less flexible, that will negatively impact our technique. Okay, that's not truth. Let's talk about it in this lesson. You are going to see how you can develop hypertrophy in a positive way to karate that will improve their performance. How can you take the risk of transforming it into something bad, as many people believe in karate. So if you use it properly with the right methodology, well integrated inside a well-designed training program for strength, power, and speed, the result is always positive, but you have to know some details so you can make the best decision if you if you try to introduce hypertrophy training in your karateka's program. Okay, it doesn't matter if they are athletes or not, if they are karatekas from kata competition or kumite competition. Okay, just watch the lesson, enjoy it. It's about 30 minutes. Okay, and at the end, please send me your feedback in the comments, put me some questions. Okay, whatever you want to send to me. Okay, so have a nice lesson, and let's go directly to muscle mass in karate, yes or no. Okay, martial greetings, and see you next week. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the first additional course of our Karate's Strength and Conditioning specialization. Thank you for being here. This really shows your commitment to seek to true knowledge about strength and conditioning, especially specific for karate. We are going to start with the course athletic muscle mass, where we are going to talk about how to train maximal strength, how to get some additional muscle mass to your karatekas. And this first lesson is more like a chat, a discussion where I'm going to approach those myths that exist in karate's world regarding the true effect, if it's positive or negative in karate's training. We are going to see if muscle mass will make you slower, less flexible, all of that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits we may have with some muscle gaining. Um, and I'm going to dismiss that belief that maximal strength is maximized with maximal load training. Okay, I'm going to make a little chat about that because I think it's very important that you first destroy the myths regarding the true role that muscle mass may have in karate. Okay, and then with other confidence in this training variable, we are going to enter into training protocols, all the variables, because hypertrophy, for example, is one of the most studied element in strength and conditioning, and it's the one that still has uh, the biggest quantity of myths and misbeliefs. Okay, so let's start. I hope my English doesn't betray me. Okay, so athletic muscle mass. Let me open my Microsoft Word sheet. Okay, but before that, when I talk about muscle mass for karate, I'm not talking about bodybuilding. Okay, of course, that if I dedicate several years just focusing on the increase of my muscle volume without a proper power and speed training that you learn in the first phase of this specialization. Of course, I'm going to develop a non-functional muscle mass for karate. And yes, that's a negative type of muscle gaining to karate. It will impair our performance because we don't match it with power and speed development that are crucial for karate. But that is true to every sport that depends on power and speed. Rugby, American football, soccer, karate, MMA, whatever. Okay, so I'm talking about a functional muscle mass like these examples, for example, of these examples. Okay, Agaev, Dionisio, okay, that fought in karate combat with full contact, and I'm talking about this type of muscle mass, a functional muscle mass. It can be a greater level of muscle mass, okay? If you watch, for example, MMA fighters as Francis Ngannou, for example, is a very heavy guy, but it has great levels of muscle mass, but it's a functional muscle mass to MMA, okay? So that's what I'm talking about. Am I talking that being a Francis Ngannou is an ideal weight, body weight to WKF, Kumite, or Kata? It probably won't, okay? But because Kumite, for example, of WKF is a game of speed, a pure game of speed, okay? Power, it's important if it translates into speed, because we don't have to develop a knockout power as we have to do in boxing, MMA, karate combat, for example. Okay, so if I take the knockout outside the equation, I transform it in just a pure game of speed. So if I have two athletes, one with 90 kilograms, for example, and another one with 110 kilograms, if they are well trained in speed, power, and everything, okay, the athlete with 90 kilograms will tend to be faster, okay, and to be less fatigued with the same time of fighting or whatever. But this is a generic conclusion because we may have perfectly a 110 kilograms guy faster than one with 90 kilograms and with more endurance. That's possible. It depends on the training process he passes through. Okay, so but generically, let's assume that okay, it can happen, but you never know. We don't have exactly 100-kilogram guys performing kata or WKF Kumite, so we don't know what would the results be if that happened with a guy that is very well trained in speed and power, regardless of being a heavier guy. Okay, but let's talk that generically it can happen. Okay, but I'm always talking about the functional muscle mass. As Agayev, um, Dionisio, Sandra Sanchez, for example, when we look at her, she's a thin woman, but she has very little amount of muscle fat for a woman, okay, a muscle fat, body fat for a woman, and we can say that she has a good muscle structure. She's not just a skinny woman, okay, without any muscle development. She's a true athlete in terms of muscle development. It's not a weight, an Olympic weightlifter is not okay, but she has a very functional muscle mass for her height, her weight, and everything like that. Okay, we have Damian Quintero. He has a good muscle structure. Kiuna has a good muscle structure. Sufogo from Turkey, he has a good muscle structure, for example. Okay, so we can find easily, and I truly believe, but this is a personal belief, that in the next 10 years, a karateka that doesn't develop a good muscle structure, as these athletes, for example, will have a hard time to reach the top level of sports karate in his country or her country internationally, because that is the trend in every sport. Okay, and karate will not be different from that. Of course, we always have exceptions that will always occur. Okay, but generically, athleticism will be more and more important for the results you may want to have in sports karate. Okay, if you are not a WKF karateka, if you don't train your karatekas for WKF tournaments, and you want to develop a knockout power for self-defense or whatever, muscle mass will have a even more important impact in your performance. Okay, because we must have a certain level of weight in our power production to knock out someone, as you surely know. Okay, so that's a no different game. Okay, so let's see the myths. The myths. So, myth one. Let's keep it simple. Okay, myth number one: you will get slower. Not exactly. Okay, can you get slower with muscle gaining, with muscle mass, with hypertrophy? Yes, if you develop a wrong training program in terms of strength, power, and speed. Okay, so if you just focus on increasing your muscle mass without matching it with a proper and well-designed power and speed program, Of course, you will get stronger, but the muscle gains you may have, 5 kilograms, 10 kilograms, 15 kilograms, I don't know, okay, if the muscles are not used to a high rate of activation, okay, of motor unit activation, if they're not used to produce the highest speed in terms of contraction, yes, you will get slower because you gained 5, 10, 15 more kilograms that don't participate, don't produce high levels of power and speed. So it's like you put a bag in your shoulders with more 5 or 10 kilograms that will just be a dead weight. Okay, generically speaking. So you just have to ensure that you put hypertrophy inside, integrated in a well-designed power, speed, and strength training for your karatekas. If you guarantee that, let's think MMA, boxing, you have very heavy guys with a well-developed muscle mass that are very fast. Okay, other sports, American football, rugby, you can find men with 110 kilograms that run faster than me. That way, I weigh 88 kilograms, for example. So, size, muscle mass, volume, okay, are not a proof of of being slower. Okay, so that's a myth, but it's also a risk because if you don't develop it integrated in a well-designed power and speed program, you will get slower potentially because you will put more weight in your body without being functional in terms of power and speed production, especially speed. Okay, so you just have to integrate hypertrophic training inside a program that includes also power and speed development, as I taught you in the first part of the course. Okay, myth number 2, you will get less flexible. It's also a myth, but a risk also. Okay, why? Not by the effect of developing muscle mass, of course. If you get a bodybuilder body, okay, with 140 kilograms, with huge volumes on your biceps, chest, whatever, okay, you will be stuck because the movement doesn't happen because you don't have space. Okay, it's just as simple as that. One person that develops huge volumes of muscle mass will get less space to move his or her body segments, but that's a generality, okay, generalization. You can also find exceptions, but the biggest problem in losing flexibility with the strength training, it's not in strength training, because evidence also shows that if you perform the exercises in full range of motion, you can even develop higher levels of flexibility. Okay, the problem is with two situations. One of them is that you start dedicating less time to stretching. Okay, less time to stretching, you will lose flexibility. But you don't need to go to the gym doing hypertrophic training. You just stop for 1 year, 2 years doing karate or stretching, and you will get less flexible. Okay, it's the same thing. If you replace a given amount of time that you dedicated to stretching or karate that have shikodachis, Jordan Garys, everything that demands high levels of stretching, okay, and you replace that time for hypertrophic training, yes, you will lose flexibility because you decreased the amount of time you were stretching. Simple as that, okay? And the other problem is that nowadays you don't find it as usual as in the past, okay? But many people used to train with with shorter ranges of motion. For example, the bicep, instead of making the entire range of motion, may something like this, okay? And that will once again take your muscles out of a stimulus that takes them in a full range of motion. So they lose the ability to stretch as much as in the past because of that. So if you gather hypertrophic training, muscle mass training with stretching, with karate training, that demands Jordan Garys, Shikodachis, and Kutsudashi, whatever, okay, there is no reason to become less flexible. No reason, okay? You probably know some combat sports athletes, for example, that have huge thighs and make a full split. In the movies, martial arts movies, in combat sports, you can easily find them, okay? Gymnastics, you have guys with huge thighs that put their leg everywhere. So if we observe the reality outside of our beliefs or misbeliefs, okay, you will find that it's perfectly possible. If you get less flexible with hypertrophic training, it's because you are not training flexibility enough. Simple as that, okay? The myth number 3 is that your technical may be impaired with muscle gaining, okay? No reason for that to happen, okay? It might happen if you once again replace the hours you dedicated to karate training and exclusively dedicate to hypertrophy training during 2 years, and you may lose some coordination, some body awareness, okay, specific for what you made in Kumite or Kata. Of course, if you have huge volumes of muscle mass, you might be, okay, how do I say this? They shock, they yes, they boom, okay. For example, you want to close your elbows. If you have a huge chest, a huge bicep, a huge latissimus dorsi, okay, it probably won't close because they are beating. I'm missing the word. Let me see in my translator. I'm sorry. Just the best for you, okay? Let's see. Chucar. In Portuguese, we say chucar. And in English, I don't remember the word. Shock, okay. Bump, shock, okay? That's it. So, last technique. That's not true. It might happen a situation, but it's not with someone that already trains karate for years. It won't lose that intermuscular coordination. But let's take the example that it can occur that a very big guy with great levels of muscle mass comes to your lessons, to your classes as a newbie. Okay, he doesn't know karate, never made a kata, a noitsuki, nothing. Okay, and he might be one of those guys that just focused on hypertrophy without making any mobility, flexibility, anything. Okay, besides hypertrophy. Okay, and he might be a very tense guy. Okay, he doesn't know how to relax his body. Most of the times when we see that someone's lacks coordination, the biggest problem is because they can't relax the right muscles. That co-activation that we talked about in the first module of Exploded Karate, where the antagonists are too activated, don't relax so the movement can be smooth, okay, it might occur. But once again, it's not because of muscle mass, it's because a very narrow type of training that didn't develop the right skills in that person. It's not about muscle mass, okay? It doesn't make any sense. Gymnastics, very harmonious movements, amazing, very smooth, very controlled, very whatever explosive, and they have big levels of muscle mass, functional, not a bodybuilder. Okay, of course. Okay. Now let's see benefits. Benefits. If you gain muscle mass, you will increase your maximal strength. Okay, you will have healthier muscles, healthier body segments. For example, if you are 50, 60 years old, it's very important that you go to the gym or in the dojo and develop muscle mass, okay? Because there is a problem identified with age, that is sarcopenia, that you lose muscle mass, and that's very it's quite harmful for your independence, for your muscle health. Okay, so please go and make hypertrophy training. You won't get as Arnold Schwarzenegger. You can be perfectly relaxed about it. Okay, and it's very important. You develop power in the first phase of hypertrophic training, as you already know. You increase maximal strength, that will transfer in the first phase of training to power, okay, and potentially to speed. When you train power and speed, if you have higher levels of maximal strength, you already know that the training of power and speed will be more effective. So we have a bunch of benefits, and the risks are related to these three myths, but it's um, also is always related to bad training program. Okay, so more. Let's talk about another thing. Let's see some scenarios. I like to give scenarios because when you have to take a decision, you need to make a decision on how on if you should put some of your athletes in an hypertrophic program or not. I would like to reflect, and that will help you to make decisions in the future. Okay, so let's suppose a kata athlete, woman or man, it's the same thing. Let's suppose you have a very thin guy, a very skinny guy that is has a great technique, good levels of speed, of power, everything, but you notice that he's stagnated for a couple of years, and you don't know what to do, what to make him faster and more powerful with more athleticism. Okay, that is very important in kata. Okay, um, put him or her in an hypertrophy program might be the solution. Okay, because in kata we don't have weight categories. Okay, and you don't take any risk of his or her gaining 5 kilograms or 10 kilograms in muscle mass, and with a proper training program integrating everything, as we talked, the trend, the tendency is that he or her will be more athletic, more powerful, more faster. Okay, so it might be a good decision to make your skinner karatekas to develop some muscle mass. Okay, in terms of kumite, we have two different situations, worlds, contexts. Okay, if you have an athlete that is one of the best in a weight category, for example, you don't want to take the risk that he overpasses the maximum weight for that category. So you can take the risk that his or her gain 1 or 2 kilograms. Okay, if that makes him pass to the other to the above weight category. So in that case, you want to develop his or her maximal strength through the traditional way of training maximal strength, that is with maximal loads, very few repetitions, and that's the way that 95% of people train maximal strength. Okay, but if you have athletes that you want them to go to the next weight category because you think it's more advantages, because the competence is the opponents. Okay, it might be an easier weight category, or because he's very good, a very good athlete, but it's inside a very hard category, very fast guys, and you want him to go to another category to compete. You want him to gain weight through muscle mass, not body fat, okay? Because body fat is just a dead weight that won't make anything for your athlete, okay? Or let's suppose another scenario that where you have an athlete that is in the lower stage of a given weight category. For example, you have the category of less than 75 kilograms, and the athlete weighs 70 kilograms. Okay, he has a margin of 4 kilograms to that he can gain without going to the next category. Okay, so the solution is always trying to develop muscle mass, to develop some weight with muscle mass, not body fat. What's the advantage of that? The shock power, okay, the power of receiving some Shudan Shigaris, for example, the confidence he may have or she may have when looking to more how can I say? Let me see. Corpulento. Corpulent. It's amazing. Corpulent opponents, and that might affect, okay, his or her trust, her trust, no, confidence, self-confidence, and he or her may develop high levels of power and speed and everything with 2 or 3 more kilograms in terms of muscle mass. Okay, so it can be a good decision. If you don't want it, don't want your athletes to take the risk of going to the next category, not hypertrophy, just maximal strength with the traditional method. Okay, so what is that? This is to close this first part of the course. Maximal strength can be developed in 2 ways. Okay, in the short term, the best way is with the what I call, this is not an academic term, okay, the traditional way of the traditional maximal strength training. Okay, and what is this? Is when you is what 95% of people do. When you ask some professional in strength and conditioning, you ask him to develop your maximal strength, and mostly all of them will put you performing sets with really heavy loads, superior to 90% of one repetition maximum with very few repetitions. Okay, this is the traditional way of training maximal strength. Okay, it has advantages. It will increase your motor unit recruitment. It will improve your intermuscular coordination, the relation between agonists, antagonists, etc., with heavy loads. Okay, and it's a good choice if you don't want your athletes to gain weight. It's a good choice in the short term because you can rapidly develop their maximal strength in 1-2 months. Okay, following this strategy that I'm going to give you in the next lesson of this course. Okay, but in the long term, and you will be an outsider for saying this to strength and conditioning professionals. Okay, in the long term, the truth is that submaximal training, typical of hypertrophy, is the best and most effective way of developing your maximal strength in the long term. Okay, why? Because the main influencer of our maximal strength is the amount of muscle mass you have. Okay, it must be a muscle mass that is able to recruit all the motor units. You have to develop good levels of intermuscular coordination, but the truth is more muscle mass well trained is the equivalent to is equal to higher levels of maximal strength. More muscle mass, more maximal strength. Okay, if you have more contractile material, you will be able to produce more strength. Okay, just let's look to reality. Okay, daily reality. Do you know any strongman champion, the strongman competitions? Eddie Hall, um, the last one, the Tim Stoltman. Okay, Stoltman. Yes, I think so. All those guys. Do you know in the history of strongman competitions any skinny, any? I'm not saying skinny. A guy with 90 kilograms, a guy with 100 kilograms. How many of them have one strongman? Okay. How many competitors do you have in strongman? Even the last ones in the table in the chart, okay, that have less than 120, 150, 160 kilograms. How many? Okay. Why? Because the amount of muscle mass you have, if it's well trained, in terms also of motor unit recruitment, all of that will be the guarantee of developing more maximal strength. Okay, so in the long term, you develop muscle mass, you will develop more maximal strength. You have two guys. Let's suppose an example, a scenario. You have one guy that goes to the gym making 1 year of maximal strength training with traditional methods, only heavy loads, low reps. Okay, it will develop maximal strength, yes. And you have that guy that just make hypertrophy training with submaximal loads between 65 and 85% one repetition maximum, that we are going to talk in the next lessons. Okay, this guy will develop maximal strength faster. Okay, but in the long run, this guy will develop muscle mass. This guy will not develop as much muscle mass as this one, and this guy will 90% of the times develop more maximal strength. Okay, so yes, no doubt about it. So okay, if you want to develop your athlete's muscle mass, do it if you think it's useful for some of your karatekas, and you will have as additional effect maximal strength development in the long term. Okay, don't you ever forget this. Okay, but you are going to pick that typical example that, yes, but I have two guys in the gym. One is has less volume than another one, but lifts more weight in the deadlift, squat, bench press, whatever. Okay, typical example. I know that. Okay, first of all, the more corpulent guy might be corpulent. You can say he's fat. He has a good structure. It looks fine without his shirt, but it might have, for example, 20% of body fat. Okay, for a person that goes to the gym, he makes a good training, etc. He will never look fat. It will look big, not very lean, but it will be good. Okay, okay, seeing, watching. So, yes. And then you have that shredded guy, that very lean guy, that when you look is clearly less corpulent than the first guy, and you will assume that this more corpulent guy is stronger because it has more volume. But a, a big percentage of that volume is body fat, and its contribution to strength production is zero. Okay, so this guy that looks less corpulent, okay, may have 10% of body fat, but he may have more muscle mass in absolute terms. Okay, so many times we are how can I say this? We might be fooled, okay, by our perception. Not always the bigger guy is the guy that has more muscle mass. Okay, don't you ever forget this. Okay, another situation that can occur when you see some less with less volume lifting heavier loads. Let's suppose that guy that goes religiously to the gym for 5 years, very lean guy with higher levels of motor unit recruitment, with higher levels of intermuscular coordination, etc., etc. Okay, with the tendon, with the Golgi tendon organs less sensibilized and allowing him to produce higher levels of strength. We talked about everything in the first module of everything. We talk about this in the first module. Okay, in the peripheral nervous system. Okay, and it comes a new guy to the gym, more corpulent, that already made strength training in the past, but he doesn't train for a whole year, for example, and then he goes and lifts less 20 kilograms in bench press than the other guy that looks skinner, okay, but goes there for 5 years without interruptions. What happens is that this first guy that goes to the gym for 5 years will have a higher level of motor unit recruitment, a higher level of firing rate, okay, activation rate. It might have a greater amount of type 2 fibers, okay. His muscles are more trained to the task, okay. And that guy that stopped for a year or 2 years, it might have, even though, more muscle mass, but it's not well stimulated, okay. He can't make the most out of that amount of muscle mass. Do you understand me? Okay, so that's a typical situation that can also occur when you see someone with a lower a little I don't know, you understand the idea. Okay, another example of strongman, Olympic weightlifting. Who lifts more weight, the heavier divisions or the lighter divisions? Muscle mass. Okay. Okay, but in terms of relative strength, the lighter guy will, comparing to his body weight, he lifts more strength, more loads than the heavier guy. That's a comparison of relative strength regarding their own body weight. But when we talk about maximal strength, we are talking in terms of absolute maximal strength. And those who have greater amounts of muscle mass, when it's well trained, of course, they will always, or 99% of times, have more maximal strength. Okay, guys, thank you very much, guys, girls. Okay, thank you very much. See you in the next lesson of athletic muscle mass. Thank you for being here, waiting for your questions. Best wishes, my friends.